Visions of the Black Heaven. Written by Daniel Zien, read by Daniel Zien. Chapter 4. While they were driving up to his driveway, Melody saw a two-story home in a very nice neighborhood. She watched the garage door rise as he parked. The garage was finished in tan-painted walls, and the cement floor was sealed with a gray rubber covering with sparkles that looked really neat. Every tool had its place on the pegboard or in his massive toolbox. The other side of the garage had a workout room with an Olympic weight machine, a treadmill, and a small padded wrestling mat. Duke walked around to open her door, showing the way inside. They walked through a very neat pantry, then into the kitchen. She saw a china hutch to her right, an antique china hutch with gold-lined windows. The hutch was filled with very old, elegant china. A round oak kitchen table with matching chairs sat in the front of the sliding glass doors. The stove and dishwasher were modern and black. The four-door stainless steel refrigerator had an ice and water dispenser in one door. The sink was black, matching the appliances. The countertop and floor were finished with white marble tiles, providing an amazing contrast. He pushed a button on the coffee maker, looked back at her as he walked into a different room, and said, "I have to check the computer. Look around. The coffee will be ready in a few minutes." There was a clean, manly scent in the air. She could smell his different kinds of cologne and aftershave all mixed together. It smelled good and defined his essence and his character. Sitting down, he logged onto the computer. He'd been out of touch all evening. If there were any problems at the plant, he wanted to know about it. She watched the computer screen come to life as his fingers tapped the keyboard. Looking over his shoulder, she saw her picture when his screen lit up. She smiled, knowing that she was the first thing he saw signing on and the last thing he saw logging off. She thought, what a wonderful man. She watched his fingers tap the keyboard, bringing up his emails. There were no messages. He was puzzled. There were no progress report either. He called the plant to check on what was happening. He put the phone on speaker out of habit, then pushed the speed dial button. His second shift manager answered, "Relax, Duke. We have everything under control. You and Melody have a great evening. Have a great weekend. You work hard. You deserve a weekend off. See you Monday." He was about to hang up when he wondered how Boswell knew Melody's name. He smiled, thinking that the whole plant must have heard about Melody, the drunk and the drugstore cowboy too. Melody was pouring coffee, listening to the conversation. She smiled, thinking to herself that at this plant, they must think a lot of this man. He must have a very successful company. She brought 2 cups of coffee to his desk. He was typing notes into the computer. She stood next to him as she admired his desk. It was an old desk and what looked like to be an old banker's desk. The wood had been polished to a mirror finish. She put his coffee on a coaster next to him and stepped around the front room. There was a baby grand piano. Under its lid were several buttons, one of which read, "Play." She pushed the play button, and the piano softly played a tune. A 3-segment curio cabinet sat to the right of the piano. The cabinet was filled with different things. A white onyx elephant with 3-inch tusks. There was at least a foot tall and a foot long. There was a black onyx bull in the stance of attack, ready to attack a matador. Other onyx figures, and a black and white marble chess set. Melody thought, he must hold these in very high value. There were several pictures on the walls. One of Washington, D.C., in what seemed to be of times past. The people were scurrying around doing business of the country on a beautiful spring day. Another picture was of a ship at sea. It was sailing in rough waters. Yet the expression of the captain's face was that of a quiet confidence in his ability to navigate through the storm. The other side of the living room was separated by a partial wall. The fireplace sat diagonally in the far corner of the living room and had a large mantel of dark walnut wood with a red brick base. The mantel had a wooden statue of a cowboy standing and looking off into the sunset. A large wooden bighorn ram, two matching 16-inch marble stallions placed on both ends of the mantel. Each stallion was in an upright position, capturing the moment of excitement as they kicked their front hooves in the air. On the base of the fireplace was a 3-foot carved giraffe, as well as a firewood holder and other fireplace tools. On the opposite side of the living room were two overstuffed leather sofas that matched the living room decor. Along with the sofas were two walnut end tables, and brass lamps sat in the middle of each table. In the middle of the ceiling, what looked to be blades made in the form of ferns. It matched the room perfectly. She heard a strange, unique tinkling sound, a sound she'd never heard before, but that she liked. Looking around, she saw a cluster of flat marble doves suspended from varying lengths of clear nylon string. The marble wind chimes were attached to a vent in the ceiling, so that when the furnace came on, the wind chimes would make a noise, creating a pleasant sound, giving the house a warm feeling. The clicking of the computer keys stopped. She heard a chair move around and saw him looking at her. His eyes twinkled as he admiringly looked at her. The piano played softly in the background. He stood up, took a step, wrapped her in his arms. They danced. They danced all night long. But there was something special about this dance. She fell totally in his arms, resting her head on his shoulder, allowing his arms to support her. She felt like an angel, weightless in his grasp. She saw that expression on his face, the smile, the look of respect and appreciation. She felt safe and comfortable. Melody knew Duke was a gentleman and a man of honor, not like other men she had seen in the past. She knew this man was different. This man had a clear soul. He set her on the floor again. She straightened her dress, took a breath, looking into his eyes, suggested that she show her the rest of the house. Her boots clicked on the white marble floor as she followed him to the kitchen. She watched as he set up the coffee maker for the next day. She waited as he opened the French doors at the back of the kitchen. The doors opened into a glass-enclosed patio. On one side of the patio stood a gas fireplace, and the dark room glowed softly from the small flame in the earth. In the middle of the patio sat a covered hot tub. At the rear of the patio stood a very expensive-looking telescope, along with a small desk covered with star charts, graphs, and pictures of planets and solar systems. He took her hand and led her through the kitchen and living room and front room, then upstairs to the second-floor den. Walking around, she saw pictures of his military experience, the platoon and crew he had worked with. There was a glass-covered display of medals and emblems of various campaigns that he was on, a display of medals that he had been awarded. She saw a silver star, a purple heart, and several other medals she was not aware of. She wanted to ask questions about the medals, but decided to wait. There was a picture on the wall all by itself. It was a bad picture of what seemed to be Duke and two other men. They were young in this picture. She thought this picture looked very similar to the one she had at her house, but decided not to ask questions. When she looked at Duke, she saw a momentary distance in his expression, a strange blankness to his eyes, as if he were in a different place in time. Something inside of her told her to leave it alone until he was ready to talk. They walked out of the den, past the spare bedroom, into the upstairs living room. The living room had a unique shape. It was built like a pentagon with 5 sides. There was an entertainment center in the corner of the far 2 adjoining walls, a 70-inch flat-screen high-def television with a sound system under the television and speakers positioned all around the room for a fantastic surround sound. On the outside of the entertainment center was a wall-to-wall bookcase on one side of the entertainment center and a set of French doors leading out to the second balcony. The balcony was built on top of the enclosed glass room off the kitchen. Looking out the French doors, she gazed past the fenced-in backyard, over a frozen lake, beyond a snow-covered pasture, and into the line of woods that bordered the property. The scene was indeed very beautiful. The living room looked like it had been painted in a dark blue and splattered with a white paint. The splatter was a combination of splattered and padded paint to look like clouds. It really looked nice. She'd never seen anything like it before. He had the idea one day and decided to do it. He was very proud of the way it looked. The room had 2 overstuffed matching sofas, a wine-colored lazy-boy recliner, an oak coffee table, and various pictures on the walls. Melody noticed one curious thing: a replica of a mahogany Apache helicopter sitting on a different roll-top desk, with more onyx statues and a globe made of stone on the desktop. She wondered if that Apache replica had any special significance to it. Then he showed her the master bedroom, with its tall 4-poster bed made of white oak wood and wrought iron sides. There was also a chest of drawers with an anwar that must have held a 25-inch television. All the pieces that matched looked like white oak. More pictures of his military experience were on the walls. One picture showed him with the same 3 men as before, but seemingly years later. They were standing next to an Apache helicopter. Once again, he had that momentary distant look, but this time there seemed to be a tear in his eye. His mind went back to the day that everything changed. In the distant echoes of his memory, he felt the heat of the summer desert, heard the hum of the lone chopper that forever changed his life. The chopper flew overhead, dropping bombs, firing shots from guns inside the chopper. Explosions everywhere. He flinched ever so little as he felt the thunderous concussions of the bombs exploding in his mind. Duke and his combat team were running for cover as they were being attacked by a lone helicopter. He'd not been hit. He saw the medics running to assist the wounded men. His friend was lying there, still losing blood. Duke knew. He just knew. The medics were helping his friend Caleb, but he lay motionless. He ran to his chopper. He felt the G-force as he lifted off the pad. He heard the distant whipping of the Apache's blades in attack flight. Whoop, 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 whoop. He heard the screaming of the engine, his shouting, the guns blazing, the Apache's cannon fired, chasing the chopper that had attacked him and his base. It was catching up to the attacking chopper, maneuvering into attack position. He felt the trigger go down under his touch. The attacker could not get away. He was too good, too fast, too mad to let this worthless piece of trash get away from him. He had to kill the enemy for what he did. The attacker would pay with his life, as Caleb, his best friend, paid with his. The cannon fired. The chopper he was following exploded into a ball of red, orange, and blue flame. He felt a moment of hesitation, a moment of satisfaction as the violated chopper exploded. But his friend was still dead, and he could not change that. He shook it off. Without a word, he started walking downstairs. Not knowing what to do, she followed him. Unsure of his hidden past, she had heard enough about military men that she knew when and where not to ask questions. The piano played softly in the background, breaking her uncomfortable feeling. For a few moments, he had a quiet distance. She stood looking into his eyes, thinking. She wondered what this man was all about. What was he thinking? She thought of the drunk, and when he bumped her, spilling her drink, this man sprung up, ready to defend her. But he didn't hit the drunk, only sent him on his way. She also thought of how he came to the defense of the drunk when the drugstore cowboy nearly busted his face. She thought that there was a wonderfulness to this man, and she wanted to find out what that was. Standing on her toes, she put her arms around his neck, placed her hand behind his head, and put her lips to his, softly kissing him. His eyes came back to life. He put his arms around her, pulling her close to him. Silently, he buried his head in the hollow of her neck, holding her close, breathing heavy, almost in a silent weep. A few moments went by before he came back to her. She took all this in and remembered it, Like the memory of the drunk, it would take months to try to explain the moment they just shared.